Oh my goodness, I'm live. Okay, I'm gonna do a little bit of Out of Oz. I was just watching a little bit of out of the Oz show on YouTube, and they were talking about Glinda the Good and her gowns, and well, what came to my mind was Glinda and Rain and their battle with the dragons and the riverboats. It just flashed into my mind, and well, I thought we should visit it. And at noon on this day of Lansing summer light, Glinda began to hear the sound of the dragons. Their cry was at once serrated and tuneful. Oh, this is Out of Oz by Gregory Maguire. Let me start again. At noon on this day of Lansing summer light, Glinda began to hear the sound of the dragons. Their cry was at once serrated and tuneful. Glissanda of the violin interrupted by yowls of cats in heat. Now that Glinda was really and truly imprisoned, her aggressors clearly felt no more need for secrecy. The dragon trainers led the fearsome creatures around the east edge of the house, below the ballroom, a military parade of sorts. 6 of them, perhaps one each to haul the 4 warships, and an extra dragon at the front and another to the rear as sentries. Fearsome, she thought, as she might never dream of anything else again. Each of the 4 creatures was ridden by a soldier in leather chaps. Each soldier, equipped with a whip and dirk, looked terrified. Each leaned forward, wrapped obscenely around the neck of his mount, whispering to it, "Dragon masters." She had heard tell of such, but the creatures themselves, Rain had only the glamour part of it. Yes, there were scales that burned in the sun, imbrications of bronze and bruised purple gold, but a lizardly darkness obtained as well, the stench of the bog. Their skulls were shaped less like horses than like some strange elongated insect. And eyes? She remembered the glowing eyes of the clock on the time dragon, like genuine eyes. Those had gleamed with life, but those actual dragon's eyes looked polished, blank, black, deadly. They reflected all they gave, nothing away. "Pull back, lest one of them see you," said Glinda. But Rain behaved as if she were at the parade of a traveling zoo. Glinda had to hold Rain's hands to keep her from clapping. "Let's try the book once more, shall we?" she said when the dragons had passed. Before they could pull it out, Zaccas opened the door without knocking, and Cherrystone strode in. "I'm taking my leave," he told her. "Zaccas will stay behind to see your needs. I apologize for the inconveniences, but you can see why we couldn't allow you the run of your house and the service of your aides. Why do you not kill me and save yourself the trouble of abusing my staff?" she said, putting Rain behind her and holding her in place with clamped hands. Nonetheless, she felt Rain peering around her hip. "Depending on how the matter unfolds, you may yet come in use. Not to me, to your country. Your liberated staff will have spread the word that you are detained against your wishes. All of Western Munchkinland knows that you are locked up here. Should we decide to sue for peace, you are advantageously placed as a loyal Ozian with strong affections for Munchkinland. A former throne minister with personal ties to the rebel province, Munchkinlanders would accept you as an emissary for the Emperor. We've arranged it for you to be ready to serve." What have you done with Mirth? He inched forward in the heat of the impending battle. He was going to kiss her at last, but he had in mind something more of a sneer. Why should you care? He said. You don't even know her first name. She sputtered and thought of slapping him. But that would be too drawing room farce. He said, I want to take the girl with me. I think the phrase is over my dead body, and since you intend to keep me alive, you may as well go off on your capers. Your days of being a tutor are through anyway. You've got your army to manage, though I suppose now they've become a navy. I'll take up the matter when I've completed the mission of the hour. Good afternoon, Lady Glenda. May you freeze in hell. He gave the briefest of bows, not so much from the waist as from the chin, and turned to leave. As the Grimmery proved as recalcitrant as ever, they watched the first of the ships roll into view on the water. Glinda had to admit there was something terrific about the sight. The ships were painted red and gold, and from this distance looking like wooden cousins of the dragons. Their sails puffed out. The wind was strong and apparently from the right quarter. Behind the shabby masts, Glinda and Rain tracked the movement of those stubby masts against the hills, which helped them mark the acceleration of two, then three ships. The fourth would be coming along. From this distance, the dragons resembled immense, overheated ducks. There would be no stopping a fleet with 6 dragons. Hoggett's keep was lost. But Rain didn't need to be lost. There was still time. Quick, Glinda said. How is your head for heights? I'm gooder than a bird in any tree, Mum. It was too late to insist on ante or anything like that. Can you balance yourself here without falling? Rain looked out the window at the 3-inch ledge. If there's no big wind to scrape me down, blessings on you. Then there's a prayer. Best I can do, I'll give you a leg up. She helped Rain out the lower sash. Thank Ozma the windows were tall. Rain could almost stand up straight before she scrambled out. She fit her naked feet, still dirty, Glinda saw, this way and that, a dancer's pose until she was erect and balanced. Anyone walking in the rose garden will see of my frock. Never mind about that. Do you think you can safely inch beyond the edge of this window? Not far, only a bit of the time to see how it feels. Oh, I'm a spider on a wall. It's easy Florence, this one. Now listen to me, Rain. I want you to inch, if you feel you can, until you're about halfway between this window and the next one. No farther. Have you anything to cling with? My fingernails? That will have to do. What does I do when it gets there? Just wait for further instructions. I am going to scream a little bit, but I don't want you to be startled. I'm only acting. Acting? Like the puppets in that play. I'm not really screaming. It's like singing. I didn't know you sung, Mum. Songs like, oh, I have lots of little talents. Cooking is the least of them. That's what I heard. Don't be snarky. Are you ready? You won't be startled and lose your grip. Spiders don't fall off the wall when they hear a singer. I may have to double the octave to get some attention. I'm watching the fleet sing away. Here I go. Please, Laura Luna, please. Or the unnamed God, anyone who might be paying attention. Elvalba. She reeled out. Her voice, it wasn't very convincing. That was it called Rain? That was my warm-up. Here comes the real thing. She was gratified that when she let loose, 2 of the dragons turned their heads, but she couldn't watch them. Zackers was unlocking the door. Glory and gumption, Lady Glenda, are you all right? She wheezed, holding her side. The girl! She's trying to escape out the window. Oh, Cherry Stone will have my head. Also yours, she added in a more normal voice as Zackos rushed to the open window. Holy St. Lawrence, said Zackos. Get in here, girl, before I whoop ya. You'll break every little riblet in your skinny little frame. Take my hand. Oh, screamed Glenda, beginning to enjoy the role. Don't worry, Mum, I've almost got her. She's quite a little scorpion, ain't she? Glenda walked backwards, screeching the way she'd seen opera singers do on stage. Only, of course, their sound was musical, while she was working to deliver something convincingly atonal. In mid-screech, she stopped dead. Zackers, his head and torso leaning out the window, turned at the sudden silence. She lifted her skirts and rushed at him like a bull, kicked his damn boots off a good carpet, and tumbled him out the window. Oh, Buggles, she thought. Nicely managed, Rain. You can come in now. I likes it out here, said Rain. You heard me, and didn't want to look down. She'd appreciated Zackers for a few days anyway, and she'd hoped he wasn't dead. But he was moaning and cursing. It was only 9 feet after all, but too high to climb up, even if his ankle wasn't broken, which it looked to be. The way his foot was improperly hinged, and he could never leap to the ground. How clumsy of me, she called down the roof. I must take a refresher course in deportment for my glide. Zacker's reply wasn't suitable for Rain's hearing, and Glinda hustled her away, but not before picking up the grimoire. The house was empty of soldiers, as far as she could tell. They had all evacuated onto the ships, except, she supposed, a skeleton crew holding Monkbeggar hostage. Knowing an unencumbered view would be essential, she hurried Rain up the dusty steps to the parapet. Ah, free from this summer bondage for a few moments at least. You need to help me with this one, Rain, she told the girl. I'm ready, Mum. Glinda taught her the words. They stood facing the fleet. The Vinkas, the Quadling country, the Gillikin, the Munchkin land. Its 4 powerhouse dragons yoked between prows, as Mirth had imagined, and the 2 extra dragons paddling along in the rear like a pair of proud, snarling parrots. Traversa, Samiad, Uniclar, Artica, and Articaska, said Glinda. That's the start of it. Can you memorize this quickly? We have so little time. Rain nodded. Her eyes were like iron, hard and true. They held hands and leaned across the parapet. The wind was blowing from behind them. Maybe it would carry their words far enough. Traversa, Samiad, Uniclar, Artica, Artiscasta, they chanted in unison. Glinda taught her the rest, line by line. Rain drank it in like fizzy wine and remembered it faultlessly. A wand would help, but I haven't had a wand in years, said Glinda. Wands go wandering. We'll have to do without. She stretched out her left arm. Rain in her right, they delivered the spell to bring winter upon the water. It was unclear whether it was working at first, for the strong wind continued to blow, the sails to billow and flap, audible even at this distance. Glinda held her breath and trained her gaze on the foothills of the great Kells. It seemed as if the masts were making slower progress against them. Slower, slower still. Then the masts shivered and creaked, and one of them split because the soldiers turned sailors didn't yet know their progress had stopped, that the sails had needed to be brought about or cut. The 4 boats and the 6 dragons were pinned in an island of ice that had come up from the water below and congealed around the webbed feet and submerged hulls. The dragons were enraged and crashing their wings, shrieking. "They sound like you, Mum," said Rain. "We haven't time to watch them drown or burn their way loose or turn around to catch us. We're cooked any way you look at it. Let's go." Safe enough to set one of the barns on fire, one that stood away from the house, and anyway, it had been more or less eviscerated. She saw that the soldiers had appropriated a good many of the posts and beams from the hayloft, a security measure bringing the structure down, she could say. The clouds of black smoke would alarm residents of Aventure and Bigelow and the rest, and ready them for whatever punishment Cherry Stone and the forces of the Emerald City might still manage to loose against them. Glenda had never saddled up a carriage, but Rain had spent her childhood in the barns. While the girl wasn't big enough to handle the tackle, she knew what was needed, and she could demonstrate how it looked hooked and snaggled together. In the time it would have taken them to walk to Zimmerstone on their hands and knees, Glinda had readied the lightest of carriages, so they set out along the coast road, heading west, away from the wreckage on the water. As it happened, they didn't need to go very far. 4 miles out, away from the burning barn, the ships frozen in the summer lake, the panicked and furious dragons, and General Cherrystone waited the lion and that high strung veiled woman with the pretty white hair. She was pacing and he was lolling. But when the lion saw the carriage, he drew himself to his hind legs and smoothed his mane. "How did you know I would come here?" asked Glinda. "You forgot for whom we work," said the woman. "The clock tells us things that may happen. Not what should happen, mind you, or what will happen, but what might. Anything might happen," said Glinda. "The secret of white prophecy is so popular," agreed the woman. "Good for business." Well, that was the story of how Glinda and Rain uh, destroyed the dragons and the fleet of the Emerald City. I just clicked on that little story. It's one of my favorites from Gregory Maguire's Land of Oz. Um, Thanks for listening, and I'm gonna end the stream.